Okay, we're back to the video again. Now, my resources, my cable, the 2.5mm 2-core and earth thermoplastic sheath power cable that we're using to wire these two power points up with. First, go to the still bin on the left-hand side of the workshop and source the cable out of there. But if you do source cable out of there, you must cut all the single insulated tails off and go and return back to a cable looking like this. You must go back to a cable looking like this with two ends like this, so then you can prove and practice and become more proficient at actually stripping the cable and preparing it ready for termination. So you've got to determine that the two cables, all the cables that you're going to be using are long enough. Remember that the end piece has got to have a 400mm tail. So we can just feed this through the conduit like so. And quite often you get caught in the end, just put your finger in there. That wire's a bit short, so I can't use that one. But I found another one here that I've prepared earlier, so this will be fine. Just keep your arm nice and straight when you feed in. It's not muscle, it's method. Most things to do with electricity are method, they're not muscle. Get your two tail ends, and you want a tail approximately similar length to that ready for termination. That's between two power points. And I need a tail 400mm long for termination. So that cable there is not long enough. But this cable here I've also sourced this out of the bottom of the steel bin, so there is cable there. So be conscious of reusing cable. Just don't be in a hurry, don't waste, take your time. Okay, right, so I always like to start at the end one rather than the middle one, okay? So let's just go through a methodology and stripping the cable again. Come back over here, get some preparations of my gear that I'm actually using, the gear that I've already used and I'm ready and I've finished with. I just pack it up in a nice, neat location so it's not going to be in my way. Remembering that a clean work site is a safe work site. Got my two double GPOs or power points, classic 2000 series, catalogue number C2025. Okay, they're ready for termination. I'll put them up on the bench here, ready to go. Okay, so the methodology that I'm using for this is going to be a case of using several tools. The first tool I'm going to use is my pliers. Now, I've mentioned to you on many occasions that we possibly leave 75mm of cable, of single insulated cable left ready for termination. So I always go back more because you can always cut some stuff off. Cut some off. So here we go. I squeeze the out of the pliers like so, and I'll leave a depression on the cable like so, right? Now, in just doing what I just did there, you can see that I've actually creased the insulation, can't you? If you zoom into that, you can see that I've actually creased the insulation. So I've now actually ruined that cable. So that's how easy it is to do. So I'll pull that cable out. That cable now is going to be too short. That's not going to be no good for our exercise. So we'll push this cable through here now. And we'll do that again. Okay, here we go. These jaws are a bit sharper than the other ones I used yesterday. That's why I've obviously come unstuck there. Give it a nice squeeze. Get a nice little depression there. Not too hard. Twist it, pull it, go back to where the cut is, like so. And just peel the single insulated cables out of the outer sheath and just pull off like so. And just pull off like so. Okay, now we've got approximately 100mm of cable, single insulated cable, an active, an earth, and a neutral to be able to terminate our power point with. So the methodology that I've been showing so far is we get a pair of our left hand if you're right-handed, or you're right-handed if you're left-handed. But if you're right-handed, you grab your left hand, your pliers, with your jaw facing your left hand, a slight depression. You can see there's a slight depression on the outside there, and you just push the pliers away like so. It's nice and easy. No effort at all. If you happen to squeeze too hard with the pliers, which I see quite often a lot of you doing, you're really straining, pushing it away, that means what you're actually doing, the jaw has bitten down through the insulation into the copper underneath, And because it's done that, you're trying to push the copper and the sheave off at the same time. We just, obviously, there's two things that are going to occur there. It's going to be very, very hard to do. Two, you'll actually crease the copper, even though there's 7 single conductors in that copper. When you start twisting, some of those are going to break off. And therefore, you're going to have a poor termination, or not as good a termination as you could have. And that just won't pass. You need to be able to terminate it without creasing it. You need to be able to strip it without creasing the internal conductor, ready for termination. The third one here, I am going to use the stripper. Now, if we look at the stripper, I haven't actually shown you this yet. If you see the stripper there, up close, we can see that it's got some labels in it. So it's got labels written from 0.5 right through to 4. And they are different size conductors, 0.5 millimetre squared up to 4 millimetre squared cable. We're going to be using the 2.5 millimetre cable, so it's the second hole from the right hand side. Once again, I open the drawers up close to where I am, put the cable at the mark where I want to strip it, squeeze, make sure it's in the centre, and away we go. If you don't put it in the centre of the hole, it'll actually crimp the copper underneath it and you'll break a conductor again, which is something that you obviously don't want to do. Once again, methodology, set the power point up so that the cable is actually facing the right way. So all the conductors are going to be where so the active happens to be on the right pin. So if you look at our power point here, this is it's actually sitting like that. I hold it upside down. That's our red, a green, and a black. So if you turn it over and screw it like that, you'll see that's the order they've got to be in. So down at the power point again, red, green, and black in the correct order. That's what we want to see. Excuse me. Okay. Hold the cable, twist, pull, twist, pull. Starting right at the insulation. Twist and pull away from you like so. Just keep doing that. You see how it's nice, it's just sort of plaiting together? And it just naturally wants to do that without trying too hard. If you just keep going around like that, as I've seen some of you do, you'll actually twist it up on each other. And that's not a good thing to do. Once I'm happy with it, I'll cut the end of it off like, putting my small cuts up on top of the bench so I can sweep them up later. Twist it up again, fold it so that it doesn't, when you do fold it and return it back, that the returned edge does not go past the edge of the installation, like so. That's about where it wants to be, like that. Get all through and ready to go, ready to terminate. Cut off a bit of the excess. I fold it over again. And I grip it up tight like so, and a nice neat joint like that. That's what I expect to see. Every time we cut off, just do a couple more twists to tighten the cable up again. Bend it over like so. And there we have 3 wires ready to terminate like so. Okay, so now I'm going to terminate the cable. I'm going to use my 8-gauge 3-feet screwdriver, which is this screwdriver. Got a number 2 head, according to that. I can pull the cover off like so. I make sure before I start terminating that I loosen up all the screws, ready for the wires to enter the tunnels inside. Now, I've said something of you previously, you can actually make your cable conductor longer than that because the tunnel goes down quite deeply. So if you make them this short, which is also absolutely fine, you just got to make sure you don't push the conductor in too far and screw the screw up on the insulation rather than the copper. So be aware of that. The single insulation, which is the red, black and the green, only wants to enter the top fluted edge of the actual tunnel, but not go into the copper part of it. So about like so. And then you screw it up like so. Do your earth first, always, because earth protects you. It's a good methodology to get in your mind and your work practice that you always do the earth first. Earth, doesn't really matter which bit one you do next, but I always do earth. Get the neutral lined up correctly, once again. Go through, do it up again, similar method. Make sure it's copper, So the brass screws are screwing up into the copper, not onto the sheath of the cable. If you screw it up into the sheath of the cable, you won't get a good connection, okay? So just be aware of that. And the third one, I'm just taking my time, not rushing it, using good methodology. Now, once all three of them are done up, you don't say, oh, that's good enough. You always go back and QA your work. Now, because I've used a Phillips head driver, a screwdriver, and these screws are either Phillips or flat, you have to cross-check sometimes. So what I always do to cross-check, I get my 5mm, 5.5mm by 125mm bladed screwdriver. All these screwdrivers, by the way, have a 1000-volt insulation rating, so it's obviously to withstand electrical practice to use insulated screwdrivers. And I just go through and just double check all my screws. I'm not trying to break the head of the screw, I'm just doing it up so it's good and firm. And it's just a touch thing, and you'll learn that over time. Okay, I'm happy with all those screws now. So put the screwdriver down. I now can screw that power point back. Now, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it back inside. I'm just going to actually get that so it's somewhere near where it needs to be. I'm going to create a loop here with this one, this power point. So I'll create that loop by just bending a little loop in there by pushing it at the same time from this end, like that. I haven't cut anything yet. Don't need really to cut anything yet. Okay, so here we are like this. Get about what I need about there. That's about what I need. That's all good. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to get two PowerPoint screws out now. Now that's in the Milwaukee box next to the pedestal drill at the back left-hand corner. I resorted those screws last night so they're more easy to find. So here we go. I've got a total of 4. They once again have a Phillips head, so it's much more easy to use a Phillips for this. So basically, I've got a really bad habit. I'm not sure, you shouldn't do this. I've got a bad habit of putting the screw in my mouth ready to use it. I shouldn't do that. I don't want to teach you bad habits, but that's generally what I have done and have always done. And obviously you don't want to do that because you can actually swallow your screw. However, you can use your own methodology. So get the screw, put it inside, line it with the first hole. Once you're happy that your cable is going to be pushed back nice and neatly, that brings press in the joint. Start your first one. Start your second one. Like so. Just work from side to side until they go home. Now once you're getting pretty close to it being tight enough, you just want to make sure that the block is nice and straight with the top edge of the actual mounting block behind it, okay? I want you to use a Phillips head screwdriver. I do not want you to use a rattle gun for this because these are metal screws, and if you're not proficient with a rattle gun, you can quite easily knock the head of the screw or strip the thread behind it. So do not use a rattle gun to screw those up. Once you're happy with that, put the cover on. And there we have the first PowerPoint done. Okay, now we're moving on to our second PowerPoint. Once again, I'll make sure I've got plenty of tail. So I'll make sure there's no twists in the cable, so I've got to pull the twist out of that cable. Okay, so now I can actually cut that cable. Got a nice little bend in the middle there, I can cut that and I'll get them pretty close to the same length. Okay, now I just base them so that there's no twists in them again. Okay, I've done that. I now know that these jaws are quite tight from our previous experiment with the first PowerPoint. We know we cut it too deeply. So just QA yourself, and I'll be watching as well while you're doing it. Not too deeply. Line them both up so that they're sitting very close to being the same. There we are there. So that one's going to be approximately there again. And do the same with that one. Okay, let's get both of these ready. Use the same methodology again. Hold the rear of the sheath and just pull forward in both cases. Okay, so you've got those ready to go. Keep all our rubbish in order mounted so that when we do want to pack away that we haven't got a long time in actually cleaning our work site. The messier you are, the longer it takes you to clean up. And as I said to you before, we'll talk about safety, OH&S, good work practice. You can see that I've got my hard hat on, I've got my safety glasses on, and I'm wearing high-vis clothing. Now once I've done all that, something that you didn't do with the other exercise, but you are going to do with this exercise, and that is this. I want you now, at this point here, to take the sheath together. A lot of people don't do this, and this is not mandatory by any means. I just want to teach you that if this wasn't a mounting block and there was actually a wall cavity, and this was a plaster wall when you're fitting a power plant on a plaster wall, which you will be doing later on in the year, there's actually a 100mm cavity, and sometimes there's a 200mm cavity behind, which basically means in doing this practice of actually making sure the cables all act as one, not putting any stress on any individual joint, it's really good practice that you actually learn how to do this well. And we're doing this in the classroom from the first exercise, so you get more proficient at it and understand the methodology in doing so. Once I've got that done, I now part all my cables so they're in a relatively neat order, ready for termination. So they're all pretty well the same length. If they're not the same length, I now make them the same length. So to do that, I just put them all together like that. I'll get my side cutters, so I actually now make them pretty close to all the same length. Just a few little nips here, and they will be very close to being the same length. Because they're all the same length, when I strip them, they'll all be at a very, very similar, or exactly the same, which is ideal, length of copper poking out of the single insulation. Okay, I'm going to use my wire strippers only for this one, and you can do the same. So line it up with a 2.5mm hole, go through and get them all ready to go. Okay, once you've got the wire stripping done, you pull all your shoes off if they don't automatically fall off whilst you're doing it. Pick up all your little tags as you go, because they will haunt you if you don't do it as you go, unfortunately. Okay, so now methodology again. We do our earth cable first. So we get our earth cable down like so. You see, look how good that is. That is just nice and neat, nice cut edge. I can actually make them pretty much the same length without any effort whatsoever. Okay, so look at it slightly this way so for that to happen. And once I do that, I just twist them up like so. Hold them nice and tight. Pull forward at the same time. Get a nice strong twist on it, so the cables are not going to fall apart under the screw when the screw gets done up. And there we are, we have our earth cable done. Now we're going to do our active conductor. Same thing again, line up the single insulation like so, and here we go, same thing again. Now our last conductor is our neutral. Do that again as well. So you can set it, the earth wire out of the way, single insulation's lined up like so, and away we go. Okay, there we are. We have our three conductors. Just on the Q8, just run your blinds out one more time. No harm in doing that. Better be safe than sorry. Okay, so there we are. We have our three conductors all ready to go for termination. Get our block ready again, same method as before. Make sure the screws are fully undone. Don't undo them so that they fall out. So they're still slightly, just see the end of it still, looking back down through the tunnel. If you unscrew them too far, you'll screw them out, and they're not easy to realign, unfortunately. Okay, here we go. We're going to insert them into our power point. So we're just going to start all of them slightly into the tunnels, each one. Get them all lined up, like so. They're all lined up. We will push them in so that the single insulation is actually entering the tunnel. Okay. Once that's done, we can do our earth wire in the middle again. Do our earth first. Make sure that you haven't pushed the insulation in too far, so you're screwing up on the insulation. just do a neutral second, like so. And our third one is our active. Just pull it out a little bit, it's going a bit too far in. Make sure our screw is getting onto the conductor, which it is. I've got all three of them done. QA'd again with the screwdriver. Doesn't matter what screwdriver you use, but just got to go through over the terminations again, make sure it's tight. And a lot of time, well, you get a half a turn if that. But you just quality assure it, making sure it's all good, it's all okay. Double check, neutral's on the left hand side, earth's in the middle, and active's on the right hand side. Haven't got any crossovers, it's all pretty good, looking pretty neat. Now I'm prepared to screw it back, so I've actually just got to manipulate the cable a bit so when I fold it back, it actually doesn't put undue stress on the joints. I just do that by just making a little fold in it, like so. I just turn my power point around a little bit so it can change the shape. Then I just turn it around like that. And it just sits back there, ready to be screwed back. I'll get my other two screws that I prepared earlier. I line up the first hole, give it 3 or 4 turns just to start going, then get the second one lined up. Just use a screwdriver for this again, do not use a rubber gun, because you could easily ruin the head of the screw or strip the metal thread in the actual housing of the mounting block. And that I don't want you to do. Of course, we've got to try and reuse these blocks for the next class. So just be aware of that, they're not the only person using the blocks. Treat it with care, and you can simulate use for the customer, because the customer themselves is going to want a neat job being done, and they don't want you to destroy their equipment. There we are, 2 blocks are on. We've got a tail. Our tail is longer than what I actually have allowed for. I said 400 millimeters before, but that's okay because I can always cut it shorter. But I'm not going to be overly critical about this because this is a tail for testing purposes, okay? I've actually got 500 millimeters because that was a bit of cable that was already being pulled out of the recycle bin. Therefore, I'm using a renewable cable anyway. So once again, I prepare the cable for testing. In testing this cable, this is also going to be the cable that we put the LV supply on. So when we do this preparation and testing, we've got to prepare it in a very similar manner that we've tested the power points and terminate the power points prior to this. So once again, a light crimp, around about 100 millimeters or thereabouts down the outer sheath. Cable just parts nice and easily. You pull off and you pull off again. Okay, once again, you can either use your pliers or your screwdriver to do the termination ready to go. I'm going to use my pliers this time. Nice and easy, run it around and flip her off. So twist the cable up and don't leave it, don't bend it, sorry, just leave it out, twist it up like that, ready to go. Because when we use when we liven this up, when we use test purposes and so on, especially in livening up, we'll be using a couple of ELV clips just to join the wires together. We'll just cut the spare ends off so it's a nice neat end. Give it a twist again. Same with the earth wire. Make them all similar length. Have a bit of pride in your work so it looks good. Okay, so let's go back to the document again. It says on page 2 of 7, job 2, wiring, connect 2 only clips with 235 power points. That's 1, that's 2. Using 2.5mm 2-core and earth 7967 cable, TPS cable, that's this cable here. Attach 2 molding blocks as per job 1, however, with 300mm centers. And we've said clip the cable to the timber surface between the power points. Well, we are clipping the cable, but we are running them in conduit, and clipping the conduit or screwing the conduit to the timber surface. This is the only difference to that description. Leaving a 400mm table at the end of the last power point, which is the power point on the right in this case. You can make it left or right, but you've got to leave room on the left or the right for your batten holder in your job 3. So I've left a space here for my batten holder on the left here for my batten holder to go, because job 3 says to wire a power point, which is power point 1, and 1 light switch. So I'll take that off and I'll put a light switch there, and then saddle and fix with screws conduit, which is what we've already done so far, and then install a light switch must control the light. So with the light switch and controlling the light, that will require extra materials, and that will be a batten holder and a 1 or 2-way 20mm junction box. And I'll just quickly get those so you know what they are. Okay. So here's our light switch. That's our light switch cover. This is our light switch, which is a 1 gain classic 2000 series light switch. This is a Clipsal 530 series batten holder. And this is a 1-way J-box. You can use a 1-way J-box. If it had another one of those little ends on the other side, it'd be a 2-way J-box. Either one is fine, okay? And that's what we screw our batten holder to, and we have conduit entry in the end for the conduit to go in. So for our conduit entry here, we'll have another 200mm piece of conduit coming out of the end of here, going into here for our light. Just make sure you're clear on that. But before you go onto that section, you've got to go through and complete our continuity and polarity tests, which are going to be the same tests that you completed in your topic skills practice. So we're just going to have a short break, and then we'll do that test.